Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am the Progressive Moose, just getting things started. It's about 13 minutes till showtime. So if you're watching on YouTube, please skip forward about 13 minutes. You'll find yourself where you want to be. All right, guys, just gotta send out my invites, get people gathered. Hello, everyone, and welcome. If you're just joining now, I am the Progressive Moose, getting ready to do my weekly news hour here on Sunday evening. Which means, guys, you're here, you've made it through another week. So kudos, even if there was a bit of hard times through the week, you still made it through, and we can start on another week. Just bear with me as I'm sending out invites here, guys. Apologize, it's always the first, minute and a half getting things set up and everything sent out, ready to go. Can be a challenge at times. Hello, there we go. Guys, we got four people here. Hello, everyone that is here. Thank you for joining. Pasty Native, I see you there. Welcome. I believe, Nikki, you are here as well. Hello, Nikki. Happy Sunday. Don't forget to share the live, everyone. Let people know we're gathering. Put your finger on my forehead like you hate me. Hold it for a second. Bam. You got a list. Share it individually.
Hey Moose,
Hello, Nikki. How you doing?
I'm pissed.
Let's hear about it. What's up?
So I decided to take the time and read through Bill 6 that Tim Houston put through that passed. It was about the mining and the fracking.
Yeah.
Well, there's other things that he put into that bill.
Okay.
So one of the things that he put into the bill was about noxious weeds. So they can go onto any property, whether it's privately owned or not, and not be liable for trespassing when they're looking for these noxious weeds. They can spray the noxious weeds, even if it's just one weed surrounded by a bunch of native plants. And one of the noxious weeds on the list for the province is milkweed. Milkweed is actually native to here and is needed for our monarchs. And our monarch butterflies are both provincially and federally protected. And this bill allows them to get rid of the milkweed and one of our other native plants, which is actually a medicine that our people have been using for thousands of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I know milkweed is used in many different ways. That trying to say to help with things when you're sick or infections,
Medicinally?
and yes, thank you. Um, I couldn't say it right for some reason. So yeah, no, it's definitely wow. It's crazy to see because I mean, look at how it aligns with. We've talked about different things when it comes to mining and fracking and all that stuff before, and it falls under the same concept in terms of we're gonna do what we need to do for one thing, and the repercussions are gonna be felt across the board.
Yep. And so our chief, so we have 13 bands in our nation, right?
Hmm.
In mainland Nova Scotia. That's not including up in Unama'ki, up in Cape Breton, and other places. Um, 11 of the bands are a part of the Assembly of Chiefs. Two of the bands disconnected from the assembly, but the assembly put out a letter with the signatures of all 13 chiefs standing against this bill, against the lack of consultation, and they are looking to seek legal action against the province because there was no duty to consult.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see that, by the way. I did see it over in Discord. So I apologize. I didn't let you know that I saw it, but I absolutely did see it. Um, and I think it's fantastic that they're able to organize together like that and bring it forward like they have. It sends a very powerful message that I hope not only the government in Nova Scotia feels or sees, but as well as an example for across Canada.
And everyone knows that this bill was being pushed through for the mining and the fracking.
Yeah.
But I don't think many people have actually read through the bill to see what else was quietly put in there. Because nothing about the noxious weeds was mentioned throughout conversations that I've been hearing and seeing. And so I took the time last night to read the bill and I read up on that and I was super mad because I do it like with my job. I do a lot of work with monarchs and planting milkweed and doing monarch surveys because luckily my community is thriving with monarchs where other communities aren't. So we're trying to bring it into other communities. And this is going to completely destroy all of the work that we've been doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, Thank you for sharing. Guys, if you just heard what Nikki has been saying, take it to heart. Make sure you spread the message. Eyes on Nova Scotia, especially when it comes to all the different stuff they're talking about doing, whether it's fracking, whether it's mining, all that sort of stuff, right down to what they plan to do with the plant life and foliage. Um, so,
Also, on top of that, our Mi'kmaq fishers are being harassed again.
not again.
Except right now, it's not the lobster fishery, it's the elver fishery. 8 bands are a part of this treaty fishing plan where they
Mhm.
get half of the commercial quota was taken and given to us underneath this plan, and DFO and non-Indigenous people are still harassing our people, even though we are under this plan that has been agreed upon with DFO. So DFO agreed to this plan and are still out there harassing people that are a part of this plan.
The the level of, I know hypocrisy probably isn't the right word, but I'm going to say hypocrisy when it comes to crap like this. Um, like you said, like they've already agreed to an arrangement or the deal, however you want to say that. So why are you out there harassing people and just making nonsense, in my
Because
opinion?
I'm waiting for them to come to the river that I'm on because I'm doing this fishery.
Yeah,
I've done it for 3 years now, and so I'm just waiting. I hope they show up because I'm the leader of a group of 9 people, so I hope they show up.
absolutely. Sorry, just to sidetrack for a second there, Nikki. Jax, I did see you earlier. If you're still here, thanks for joining. VA Sanity, Sita, I did see you. Appreciate the gift. Thinking of you still. You're always on my mind. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, guys, we are 4 minutes till showtime, so just a reminder: tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Let's get the numbers up, get people knowing that we're gathering and we're going to be getting into the nitty gritty. Um, Tonight, I do have a bit of a mixed bag, a bunch of different aspects when it comes to politics, both on some provincial levels and federal level. Election campaign stuff, uh, United States, Trump, of course, is in that mixed bag with the states. Yeah, so quite a bit tonight. It's going to be kind of jumping all over because I do want to try and cover more topics. Um, as well, I do
I'm
want
gonna drop.
to. Sorry.
I'm gonna drop for now, and I'm just gonna listen in the comments while you do your show. But before I drop, I want to remind everyone that election day is in 29 days. I don't care who you vote for. Use your right. Go vote, and please make an educated vote. Have a great night, Moose. I'll be listening.
Alrighty, thank you for coming up and letting us know the stuff on the ground over there in Nova Scotia. Thank you so much. There you go, guys. Nikki, thank you so much. It's always great to have you up and hear what information you have to share. Always so insightful. So thank you again so much. Guys, there's so much going on across Canada. It's hard to keep up with everything. We do our best, and that's the whole idea behind organizing and doing this together, doing it as quote unquote, one voice coming together so we can inform each other on what's going on in different areas or regions of the country and move forward with that information, trying to make a collective change. That's what it's all about. We can't do it without one another. We need as many people as possible to join the movement and bring every piece that they have with them to the table so we can do it as a collective. Antisocial, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, Moose. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to see you. It's been a little while.
It's been a while. Yeah, taking a bit of a hiatus. Been back for about a week, a little over a week or so. Um, can't guarantee that there won't be another hiatus, but here I am.
There you go. Hey, you know what? I feel that there's certain days of the week that I just refuse to take part in anything and really take in any information. Just give myself a break. There you go,
No,
guys.
100%. 100%.
Absolutely. Guys, we got 1 minute till showtime. Just letting everyone know. So don't forget, tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Uh, yeah.
So,
So
what are we
much.
talking about tonight, Moose?
There's quite a bit. I'm going to be covering a little bit of United States tariff stuff, of course, with Trump, breaking down certain aspects of policies that have been put out as kind of campaign promises. Um, yeah, it's a whole mixed bag. Going to be talking about Danielle Smith. I know we've been beating it over the head with a hammer, so to speak, but I think it's definitely relevant and important to talk about. Um,
Certainly.
yeah, NDP polling numbers right now, all that sort of stuff.
So, what are your thoughts on the current polling numbers? I mean, the Liberal Party prior to Mr. Trudeau's exodus was tanking significantly, and here we are today, where the Liberal Party is leading in the polling numbers. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, before I give you that, if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask you to mute for a couple minutes as I open the show, and I will start in on the polling numbers right off the get-go. Hello, everyone. It is 8 o'clock. Welcome to Beaver Politics, the Progressive Moose News. Guys, I do two shows. I got mixed up for a second. I also host a show called Mossy Side over on Beaver Politics. I apologize for that. So you are with myself, the Progressive Moose, on the Progressive Moose News. Thank you so much for joining. We've got a lot to get into. Antisocial is up with me right now. Always remember, guys, if you want to come up, if you have something to add to the conversation, maybe an aspect I miss or something you feel it is important to get out there, two people to know, you are always welcome to come up and do so. I encourage it. So, with that being said, remember I do have a YouTube channel as well, so you can find me over there. If you haven't followed me on YouTube, why haven't you? I put up most of my content that you see here on TikTok as well as the live recording. So once I get done here tomorrow morning, I will download and put that over on YouTube. So you can always catch the show the day after. It's always there for people to view on YouTube. So that being said, I do have the live goals as well if you feel compelled, guys. And don't forget, if I have guests up, don't forget to show the guests some love and show them some gifts as well. It's always good to spread the love that way. Yeah, all that being said, let's jump into it. So, Antisocial had pointed out the change in the polls, and I do have some numbers here right now. Um, so, I don't have the numbers in front of me in terms of what they were sitting with the Liberal Party being run by Justin Trudeau, but I do have difference here within kind of week, 2 weeks, the Liberals have picked up another 8 points in the polls in the same amount of days, guys. So in the last 8 days, the Liberals have picked up roughly points in the polls. From the 21st of March, Liberals were sitting at 34.1, Conservatives were 36.5, NDP at 14, Bloc at 7.6, Green at 4.3, and PPC at 2.1. As of the 29th, so that was yesterday, the Liberals are sitting at 41.9, Conservatives at 37, NDP at 10.6, Bloc at 5.3, Green at 2.6, and PPC at 1.9. So overall, the Liberals are gaining momentum while everyone else seems to be losing, which means the Liberals are taking the support and voters from essentially across the board, which is massive. Um, my thoughts on it, antisocial, to jump into that as that's what you asked. um, I think Mark Carney, given first and foremost his experience on the global scale when it comes to helping other countries, economies, all the different stuff he's done, even within Canada. For people that don't know, he was an advisor under the Harper government, helped out in a lot of ways, helped us get through that recession, as well as he has been an advisor to the Liberals as they've been in power as well. So he's been across the aisle in that sense. Um, but I think right now, because he's got so much experience and so much knowledge under his belt when it comes to helping economies and just helping financially get through rough patches, he is a good fit, especially with what we're facing with the tariffs, what it's doing to our economy, job sectors, all that sort of stuff right now. Um, he is moving the Liberal Party more to the right of center. So I'm be honest about that. I realize it's going a bit more right of center, but using nuance again, given his experience and what he's done through his career, there really isn't a better candidate at this point. And I think that's what Canadians are seeing, given the political climate and layout that we have right now, especially factor in the United States under Trump.
Well, and I think tonight, or in today's climate, Canadians want um, stability. They want somebody that's going to guide them through what we're seeing today. I said this earlier in a different live. Mark Carney kind of shook up the Liberal Party in a sense. He kind of gave that steadfast, we're going to get through this sort of perspective. The messaging we're hearing from the Conservative Party hasn't really changed. As a matter of fact, CBC posted a story that from people that were not authorized to talk about it, but nobody ever is, that there's a lot of sort of dysfunction within the Conservative Party when it comes to campaigning and how the campaign is going. I think this lends to a particular I don't know, unsteadiness when it comes to Pierre Poilievre. And my fear, as a former, I shouldn't say former, but a longtime Conservative voter, is that when things change, when things happen in short order, I don't know if Mr. Poilievre could be the leader that could adjust. Look at what he's done over the past 3 years. His messaging has been very much the same. And Mark Carney comes in, there's been a big change, and now there is some dysfunction within the party. There is some lack of pivot when it comes to the political messaging. And my concern is if we elect the Conservative Party into power, what will happen in the future whenever maybe something on the global scale happens where we need the leader to step up, take those instances, as they are, and then guide the country through them. Canada has been historically reactive and not proactive when it comes to a lot of our policies. The pandemic really taught us that. I don't know if Mr. Poilievre would be the one to be as reactive positively and proactive positively in the future. And I think that that's what Canadians are going to ask for. They're going to ask for a leader that is going to look at everything and be able to have that slow, steady, non-reactive pace that will put Canada in a good position, both economically. Sovereignty is in question right now, not in question, but it's being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if Mark Carney might be the leader that we need right now. I know it's old
So,
hat. It's the Liberal Party, and we're tired of the Liberal Party. But are we?
but this
Or
is
are we tired of
and
Trudeau?
that's yeah, and well, and that's the nuance, right? Because even myself, like I'll admit, I never liked Trudeau from the get go. It wasn't a matter of carbon tax. It wasn't a matter of policy. Yes, there's different things to criticize throughout the Liberal government that we've seen under Trudeau. But overall, like they didn't do that bad of a job. Where we see a lot of the issues with Trudeau was really voter fatigue. And Canada goes through this. I mean, we went through it with Harper. It was the same thing. You spend too much time in office, and they just grow tired of the leadership. Furthermore, going into what you said about Pierre Poilievre, the biggest thing I find about Pierre Poilievre, and just like you said about the Canadian government, Pierre is more of a reactionary politician, right? Even his track record, he's been in, you know, politics. He's been a politician for what? We're over 2 decades anyway. Um, and his time in Parliament, there really isn't anything that he can, kind of put a feather in his hat for to say, hey, Canadians, like, I got this done for you under a cabinet or being a, minister within Parliament. Think of what I could do if you elect me. Um, as
Well,
well
I
as,
think.
oh, go ahead.
Well, and I think that's to your point. That's kind of his downfall. Is there hasn't been much that Polyev has done. Now, there are going to be people that are going to criticize Mark Carney because prior to him entering politics, he was a private citizen. He's got companies. The guy has a doctorate in economics. He's got honorary doctorates across the country from different universities, which is great, fine, whatever. But people are going to criticize Mark Carney for being a private citizen who has an education, who has done well for himself through his companies, being the governor of the Bank of Canada, the governor of the Bank of England. I know that there is a former 46-day leader of the Britain that is going to criticize and say that, oh well, he kind of destroyed Britain because of Brexit and all that fun stuff. But the thing is that Mark Carney, the governor of the Bank of Canada in the housing crisis or the collapse and the ballooning of the housing crisis of 2008, the recession, the Bank of Canada acts on its own accord. It's an independent body. He was the governor of the Bank of Canada. We came out quite strong. Why? Because our banks are federally regulated, unlike the United States, which is great. All right, cool. So fast forward to today. People criticize Mark Carney because he was on both sides of the bench, we'll call it, or both sides of the aisle. He was the governor of the Bank of Canada whenever Harper was in power. He was an economic advisor to the Liberal Party over the past several years during the pandemic. Well, at the end of the day, you can't criticize somebody who has had a private life and is now entering into politics. There's nothing wrong, in my opinion. This is where I'm going to get shit on. There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with having a private life, building up, a bit of a financial future, what have you, Brookfield and all that fun stuff. Nothing wrong with that. And then entering into politics and being duly elected as part of our constitutional process when it comes to the election of the leader of a political party in Canada. Nothing wrong with that. Democracy works on one day a year. Well, not a year, but on one day. It's the day that we vote. That's when democracy happens. So if you don't like Mr. Carney, vote. The only thing that I'm going to say to our Canadian friends, please, for the love of all things sacred, go and vote on election day. Your vote counts.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing. I mean, I can sit here and break down, policy or even campaign promises at this point. We can break down how they work and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, and I'm challenging myself to make a video every day for my TikTok, just telling people that the election is happening April 28th. Either go vote early or show up to the polls on April 28th. I don't care who you vote for, go out and vote, because like you said, and I'll say it 1,000 times a day to people, the more people that vote, the better our system works, because there's more representation with the more votes that go through the system. So absolutely, thank you for making that point. You're absolutely right. um, I've been watching the comments, guys, and there's been a back and forth on the carbon tax. So just to straighten this out a little bit, I'm just going to quickly say the carbon tax is still in place, but the consumer aspect of the carbon tax has been lowered to zero. Okay, so there still is a carbon tax, and I've said it before, we have to keep that in place on the companies and corporations, the biggest polluters, because without a carbon pricing of some sort, we cannot do trade with the majority of the EU without being tariffed, because that's what they require within their own stance, within trade agreements with other countries. So, um, just to be clear on that stuff, like the carbon tax is still there, and people saying that it's a ploy for the liberals to get more votes right now. Let me point out one thing: you have no basis to that claim whatsoever. There is no evidence showing that Mark Carney or the liberals would implement the consumer carbon tax back after the election. So that's just nonsense at this point. Just making sure I say that one. Um, so keep that in mind, guys. So one thing I do want to talk about now. Oh, I forgot. So we talked about the support for the parties. Preferred PM polls right now would be Mark Carney in the lead, with the Liberals at 47.7. Conservatives, Pierre Poilievre is at 32%. Singh with the NDP at 4.3%. The PPC party, that's the People's Party of Canada, is at 2.7. Green at 2.5, and the Bloc at 2.2. Um, the leader of the Bloc party actually did a bit of a press conference. Um, and to be clear, like the Bloc party is Quebec centrist in terms of a lot of their platform, a lot of the stuff they're worried about is more Quebec based than the rest of the country. So
Hey,
he,
Moose.
yep,
I would love for some of these freeloaders in the comments to come up and discuss some of the perspectives like this Skiv show. If you really think that Carney would bring us to the USA and give us over freely, why don't you come up here and talk about it? Because it's easy to hide in the comments and make baseless claims. If you don't understand how our system of government works, yes, I'm calling you a freeloader. Yeah, absolutely. If you don't understand how our constitution and our system of government works, come on up and I'd like to educate you because, yeah, you're completely misinformed, man.
yeah, absolutely. And I've been very clear when I do my lives, and I'll make sure I reiterate. If you want to come up and have a conversation, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. If you want to come up and have a civil conversation, I'm down for it, but bring your facts and bring your statistics and numbers with you, because that's what you base conversations off of, is facts.
Okay,
So
and
by all
here we
means,
go. He's going on about how he's worked for 43 years and he's paid taxes and what have you. So is everybody else. As soon as you enter the workforce, man, everybody pays taxes. But if you've ever accessed our healthcare system, if you've ever driven on a road, if you've ever called the fire department, or if you've ever had a street light turned on,
so
that's what
Skiv
your
Show.
taxes go to.
Skiv show. Let me and to go to what antisocial was saying. Fact of the matter is, we all work jobs. We all do our thing. We all do our best to get through. Where the problem lies right now is with the cost of living and the government essentially going AWOL in terms of reining in corporate greed. We're all facing the same thing right now. We all put blood, sweat, and tears into things that we do, and we're not getting a return on it. Why? Because trickle down economics doesn't work. The capitalist system as we know it, that Canada is not working because it was never set up to work for us. Let's be clear
And
on that.
I don't know. I don't know what he's saying about he pays $700 a month for your benefits. I should watch my tongue. You work for the federal government. My wife works for the federal government. She doesn't pay $700 a month in benefits. Oh, wait. Are you talking about your taxes? Are you saying that taxes are benefits?
Skiv, stick around. If you want to come up and chat, by all means, but I'm not going to give you the time of day if you're just going to keep spouting off in the comments. So, by all means, stick around, be a part of the conversation in the comments, but I'm not going to respond to you anymore. So, thanks for coming. Thanks for boosting the live with your comments and interaction. I really appreciate it. You're doing a great job supporting the show. Damien, did you want to chime in?
Yep, I don't remember exactly what the popularity poll numbers were for NDP now. I think it said 10%, but Jugmeat is at like 4.4% for popularity
Mm-hmm.
at PM, and I would be one of those people who is not in the 4.4%, but is in the like 10 whatever percent.
10.6, yep.
Yeah, 10.6. I am going to vote to re-elect my NDP MP because she's already, it's re-election and it's a very safe neighborhood for the NDP. But I actually think that Jugmeat should be replaced and there should be another leader. I feel like,
It's
yeah.
Yeah, no, and we're seeing that kind of across the board right now. I think voters are tired of the majority of the leaders right now on the federal level. I think the only leader that voters aren't tired of, and I'll be honest, when it comes to Elizabeth May, I'll never get tired of Elizabeth May, the one leader of the Green Party, because they've opted for a co-leadership at this point. Um, so yeah, Elizabeth May, like her, seeing her press conferences, seeing, how she calls out different things and isn't scared to speak up is fantastic. So I don't think anyone's ever going to get tired of her. But for the rest of the parties at this point, I'll go back to saying, just like I did in terms of Justin Trudeau, like it's voter fatigue. And I think all the parties really need to consider just let's move on to another person and see what they bring to the table. And that's what you're seeing in the polls right now. I think with Mark Carney now being the leader of the Liberal Party, it's a fresh face, again, coupled with his experience and already what we've seen from him as prime minister, right out of the gate, even before the election was called, some of the stuff that he was saying or doing, like saying that he is going to continue to expand the dental care program, pharmacare program, and other key kind of legislation and policies we have in place that, like conservatives have been trying to pivot. Pierre Poilievre actually was saying, "Oh, we keep those as they are. We wouldn't cut them, um, but they wouldn't expand it any more than what they already are." Um, and I'd be hesitant to say, um, I really think that they would probably make some cuts to that stuff, just um, through legislation or policy kind of coupled in together and trying to, slip it in under the radar, under Canadians from knowing about it. To be honest, they've done it in the past under Harper, so I I feel like they might end up doing that again. Um,
Yeah, I feel like
yeah,
Mark Carney is, if he was a leader, he'd be intelligent enough to sell the public system to people and be able to expand whatever. I don't know, because like pharmacare is good, but there's doesn't cover all kinds of drugs, and there are other very important things that could be covered.
No, and that's
Oh,
that's what the expansion is going to be, right? So they are going to be expanding on the pharmacare moving forward, as well as the dental care. Right now, I only use dental care as an example because I'm somebody that won't lie would greatly benefit from it, as I'm currently going through quite a bit with my teeth. But with the way it's set up, my age range isn't eligible. But I believe that's June 1st, if I'm not mistaken, that actually gets expanded so that all Canadians, regardless of age, are able to apply and then, go from there as to whether you qualify or how much help you would qualify for in that sense.
but we
Um,
all understand that takes money for that to happen, right?
It also takes time. It takes time to like write down people's info because there's privacy laws in Canada. They can't just hand all of our info over through
Well,
an internet
no,
connection. They
no,
actually, there has
so
to
we
be like
live.
processes in place for the administration of it too.
Sure, but now Canadians, we stand on this pedestal and we say we're taxed to death because we have income tax, and I'm going to talk about taxes specifically, not benefits. EI, CPP, those are benefits. Taxes.
mhm,
We get income tax. We are taxed on the goods that we purchase, for the most part, groceries, baby clothes, diapers, things like that, not taxed. But, we have GST, government, like countrywide, and then each individual province has their own tax. Provincial sales tax, it varies by province. So in Ontario, it's 8%. So we have the HST, right? So we get taxed on that. Carbon tax. We see that in our gas bills, home heating oil, things like that. Right? So we pay a lot of tax, right? And that's kind of the stop block right there. There are taxes on individual instances, things like capital gains tax,
mhm,
which if you are fortunate enough to have an investment that pays off, which doesn't happen for every Canadian, happens for very few Canadians actually.
mhm.
We pay tax or a tax on a portion, and people have this misnomer that, oh well, okay, capital gains tax right now. I mean the previous, sorry, the instance was it was going to be 2/3, right? It's not the way it is. You're going to be taxed on right now. Well, actually, it didn't go through as a bill. It didn't pass, so it stands as 50%. And I'm one of those people that had an investment pay off. I sold a business years ago, so 50% of my the income that I made was taxed, but it's not taxed like you lose 50% of your investment. You were taxed on the profit, 50% of the profit, and that tax rate is what it is, whether it's 24%, 33%, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just saying that that's what it is. People seem to think that the
But
messaging is,
wasn't
oh, you're going
there,
to lose 50% of your investment. No, you're
what
not.
was
You're
the
taxed
basement on that
on
though?
um,
Because
250
there was a
grand.
basement, right? Your first, I think it was like
Well, no.
250,000
So
is
every
exempt.
every year, every year there is a capital gains tax exemption for every individual in Canada, and right now I think it sits around $800,000 a year, give or take. If you sell your primary residence, you're not taxed on the capital gains. There is
Yes,
a
correct.
capital gains tax exemption for every Canadian. So if you sell an investment property, there you still have a capital gains tax exemption up to a certain point. But
Yeah.
people got all up in arms to say that, oh, we're going to lose this investment money, yada, yada, yada. Are we taxed in Canada heavily? Yes. But we also enjoy some things that not, well, if we're going to compare countries, the Americans don't enjoy. And part of that is healthcare. Now, we can stand back and say our healthcare sucks. It doesn't suck. It just takes forever for it to happen.
And so even on that, so talking about healthcare, right? And using the nuance of today, especially what we're seeing, people need to realize, and again, I'll always end up using Ontario for an example because that's the province I'm in. Uh, but what we're seeing in Ontario, I believe Alberta as well, and a couple other provinces, is where the provincial government is supposed to be responsible for funding and making sure that the healthcare system is, running smoothly, for lack of better words.
Yep.
And we've seen over time where, even hell, I'll even say it's, liberals have not helped the situation when they've been around, because even on Ontario, before we had Doug Ford and the Conservatives, Wynne really didn't do a great job on keeping up with that sort of stuff either, right? So that goes across party lines, but they haven't been able to keep up with funding and taking care of, the things in healthcare. And now with the Conservatives in Ontario, and again, Alberta, we're seeing the same, where they're shifting more to private sector, undermining the public sector, right? They're giving private sector more money than they are public for in some cases, and saying, "Oh, well, our healthcare is crumbling. This is because of the federal liberals." Yada yada yada. List goes on, and that's their talking point. That's their bolstering of this is why we need private healthcare. Okay, but if you guys weren't actively pretty much throwing it into the trash bin, maybe we might have a decent fucking healthcare system.
Yeah,
No?
yes and no. I mean, so you
There's
break down
there's nothing
healthcare.
there's nothing
We
that there's nothing that like a public system can't do better and more efficiently than a private system. The private system
There we
has
go.
the cost of profit, and there's nothing to gain in that except for the person who's gaining the profit. So, and I don't buy this whole the private sector is where they do innovation. There's a lot of innovation stifling in the private sector because the point is to make a lot of money, and innovation isn't always a money maker. I mean, I'm not sure
and
if you
we've
guys
always
remember
had.
the Dreamcast or whatever, or like Sega Channel and the Sega Genesis, these kind of retro video game things that were like DLC on like a 16-bit console. That was pretty impressive in the 90s, but almost no one had it, and it was way ahead of its time. So there's sort of a timing thing there too.
Yeah, we've always had some form of private healthcare in Canada, province by province.
Absolutely.
I'm going to break it down to even the most basic. Dental care is always private.
Absolutely.
Dental
Yeah.
care is a form of healthcare. Dental care can seriously lead to significant healthcare issues if
Yeah.
not properly managed, right? And then you have your paramedical practitioners, such as physiotherapists, chiropractors, massage therapists, stuff like that, right? But when it comes to your basic emergency care, and when Canadians think healthcare, they think I have, I've got a strep throat and I have to go and see my doctor. Well, here's the thing: we are the second largest country in the world, and we don't have enough people to fill the country. America, and we always compare ourselves to the United States, but the United States has got a population 10 times ours. So we're 41 million. They're just kind of shy of 400 million people. So there's a lot more stopgap there to fill the void. And they've got a country that is, what, 7/8 their size? Like, they're pretty big physically, but the land mass is not anywhere close to Canada. Our population density is quite low, whereas it's quite high in the States. But the fact is that with a for-profit system in the States, what that does is it garners business opportunity, and that's why you've got you've got cities like Cincinnati, Ohio, that have got 5, 6 different hospitals, 7 different hospitals, but they're all profit driven. University
Yeah.
health networks, they're these corporately driven health centers, because healthcare in the United States is a business. Whereas in Canada, we see it different. It's the same way we see different pew laws, right?
Yeah.
And we're that's part of our social norm. We have free healthcare. We deal with the wait times. We deal with the fact that not that we should, but we deal with the fact we don't have a family doctor. And how is the government going to be able to fix this? Well, you could change the funding model, but you can't change the amount of people that want to get into the medical profession.
I
That's the
well
biggest
and
problem. We're short
well and you
doctors.
need to incentivize that, right? And that's the
That's
biggest
right.
thing.
Yeah, we're
Um,
short doctors. My sister is a doctor. Her
even
doctorate is psychology. So
yeah,
yes, she's part of the healthcare system in a sense, in a very strong sense, because the brain's an organ, second largest organ we have, first one
mhm,
being the skin. But her doctorate is in psychology. The incentive, and she runs her own private practice. The
mhm.
incentivization for our doctors to get into family medicine or general practice is quite low in most of our provinces.
It
And
is.
because of that, we don't have the amount of people that we need to get into those sort of general areas of study because the money isn't there. Every province has a salary cap. It's funny. Every province has a salary cap
Well,
on
and that's
doctors, but not the CEOs that run the health networks. Go on the Ontario website, and you can look up
mhm.
the salaries of our local integrative health network CEOs, and I shit you not, in the GTA, in areas of the GTA, you're three-quarters of $1 million, and that's our
Yeah.
tax dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's where like even in say like I'm in Northern Ontario, so like Sudbury is the biggest hub uh in terms of healthcare and a hospital in the north. And even
I
their
lived in Sudbury,
CEO
man. I lived
makes
there for 3 years.
yeah,
Sudbury's
so
pretty not
even
too bad.
even their CEO of their hospital at this point is making six figures, as opposed to, like you said, whether it's a nurse or doctor, kind of at the bottom, quote unquote, definitely not making that much. And to couple with that, and then Sahan, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I'll have you chime in as well. Um, but what we're seeing is as well is provinces are actually hiring from other countries that have the same medical standards or better, and trying to hire people out of country to bring them to Canada to fill those positions because they don't want to have to, for lack of better words, in their opinion, they don't want to have to shovel out government money to incentivize people to get into those sectors, especially healthcare at this point. Uh, Sahand, I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. Did you want to chime in?
Yeah, no, I think you got it more or less right. It's a hand. You just gotta
Okay.
say it quicker. Uh, what I want to add to this discussion in regards to healthcare is that in some of the conversations that I have, I've been told that the private system would operate more efficiently than the public system. Um, well, at least in Vancouver, to the extent that I understand, our hospitals are run privately. It's just financed publicly. The price chart when it comes to what they charge per hour or per task is dictated by the government. So, okay, I understand that can create some inefficiencies in and of itself. But overall, these like Providence Healthcare here in Vancouver that runs um, um, St. Paul Hospital is a private organization, always has been a private organization. And Antisocial touched on how there's plenty of procedures which people can um, uh, access privately. In some of the discussions, I was told, why can't people just go get an MRI privately? I'm like, actually, they can, at least here in BC. And it sometimes does vary based on the procedure province to province. So,
They
our system is very complicated, but, I've worked in the private sector my entire life. I've worked for enterprises, I've worked for mid-market companies, I've worked for small businesses. There's always inefficiencies, and
but
some of
I
the
think
worst inefficiencies I experienced in enterprises. And so, like, our healthcare system is an enterprise. It's never going to be perfectly efficient, and it's never going to be efficient to the point where people are ever going to be satisfied, from my perspective. And it's really easy
so.
to criticize for two reasons. It's a public system. Everybody, there's plenty of reporting on it, so you can see kind of more obviously what the inefficiencies are. And the second thing is it's funded by taxpayer money. So I think people are very quick to criticize it because it's taxpayer money. You don't really get a choice.
Yeah, and I want to be clear too and kind of explain something a little bit more since we're talking about it. The biggest thing to me, when it comes to like, and I realize there's certain cases where absolutely, if somebody's able to get the care that they need, more, you know, readily available from the private sector and they have the money to go that route or the benefits to be able to go that route, then absolutely go that route. However, where the biggest issue I find when it comes to private healthcare is, and I'm going to use, I realize it'd be different, wouldn't be exactly the same as the United States or any of that stuff, but in terms of the private healthcare, because I know somebody from the United States went into the ER with lower body paralysis, had no idea why, wasn't in an accident, didn't have a bang up or, anything like that. Um, and he had to lay in the ER for hours upon hours on end because the problem with private healthcare is for them to talk to one another, they have to then, okay, so you're here, we have to get your file from your healthcare provider, which means they have to release them to us. So we have to get a hold of them, wait for them to send over your file however they want to do so, and then we can help you. Where in the like Ontario, I'll use for example, we have our OHIP card, and they put in our health card number into the system, and there's all our medical information, everything they
Yep.
need to know, our history. They don't have to go looking for somebody to try and get our information. It's all right there, set to go, and they can help you in that moment when you need it.
Well,
I
and
also just want
the
to
other
make
part
a
about
correction
private
real quick.
healthcare
Can I
is.
just say something first?
Oh, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Yep.
I just want to say real quick that just because something is an organization doesn't mean that it's private. The fact that it's publicly funded makes it a public organization. So you're erroneously calling it private because it's an organization, but not all organizations are private.
Yeah. No,
So I just
absolutely.
wanted to correct that
Okay.
because we don't want to get the. I mean,
Providence
I get what you mean.
Healthcare
Like,
is a private company. There's no ifs or buts about it. They're a private company.
no, but they're owned by the government, so that's public, right?
They're
That's
not
all.
owned by the government. They
No,
Well,
don't
they're
if
have to
not.
if
provide the
they're
services the
funded by the
governments dictate.
government, more times than not, then they're public, is what he's saying, right?
Yes,
Because
yeah.
Maybe de jure, but not de facto.
Well, no, like
In
they're
fact, they
not
are private.
profits, right? There's no one.
In
There's no private
are
individuals
they
earning
funded
profit
by
on
the
the
government?
hospital, right? There's no one
there's
earning
plenty of
profit.
Okay.
private. Tesla receives
So
funding from the
what
government
he's
too. They're
getting
not a
at
public
is
So
company.
anyway,
Same with
okay,
SpaceX.
well,
Okay, but
so what
that's
he's
but
getting at
that's
is that
completely different. That's subsidies. When you're
Mm.
talking about companies like SpaceX and stuff, that's subsidies. When we're talking about healthcare, right? If a hospital or a facility is funded by the government, that by definition means that they are a public sector, right? Because they're funded by the government.
no. So hold on.
I
I
don't
think
agree with
that's
that
like,
interpretation.
I
hold
mean,
on. I'll clarify it. I know what he's getting at. So the optic is that the equipment. So let's say the scalpels, the gowns, the janitorial services, the
The
MRI machine, the
management,
CT scan.
the
Well, hold
doctors,
on. No, not the people. We're
yeah, the
talking
people too.
about. No, hold on. What he's talking about is the fact that the sundries of these organizations, they are private companies. Siemens, who makes MRI machines, is not a public company. It's publicly traded, but it's not a public company. But where does our tax dollars go whenever we buy our CT scanner
It goes
or
to exact. Okay, I
it
get
goes to
the breakdown now.
that's
So,
okay, I see
yep,
what you mean by
yes.
that.
yeah.
Okay. So the fact is that yes, it is public money, but I will always refer to the fact that the federal and the provincial governments do not have boots on ground to do the work. They have the money and they hire private companies to do the work. As a doctor, your paycheck comes from the provincial government, but you can also be a doctor anywhere. You can go be a doctor in the States. You be a doctor, you're still, your ownership of your doctorate is yours. Your paycheck might come from the federal government or the provincial government, but the fact is that you're still your own individual person. The fact that the provincial government may pay a sanitation company for coming in and cleaning the hospitals doesn't make that sanitation company a public company. They just have a PO
They're a
purchase order.
contractor. Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
right. Yes.
But they mentioned like hospitals specifically, which are run by health authorities,
But
like more regional.
yes, they are. But the hospital itself
Yeah.
wasn't built by the provincial government. It was built by private contractors
Yeah,
who were
look,
paid
my
for
conservative
by the
friends
provincial
like to
government.
pretend it's a bunch of bureaucrats who run the show at the hospital and government bureaucrats bad. That's not the case. Providence Healthcare is entirely private. It's private
Guys,
management.
No,
The
hey,
they're
hey,
doctors
public.
are
hey, hey,
hired
They're
there.
a
The
public.
doctors who
guys.
work there are private. They're employed by a private company.
They're a not-for-profit, so they're not, by definition, they're not private. Private is a for-profit organization. The
Okay, you're
regional
right,
health
because
authorities
they're a
are
Yeah,
Christian
not for-profit.
organization. Yeah.
They're not
No, no,
yeah.
by
for-profit,
private I
right?
mean they're not government.
If I drop off,
They
guys, I
are
just
government.
want to
Oh, sorry.
quickly say, if I drop off, I don't know what's going on, but I got a notification pretty much saying that um, if I don't drop, there was a violation. If I don't drop, I'm going to be
Oh,
suspended. So
okay.
I have
Oh,
no idea what that's
sorry.
about, to be honest. Um,
Those are serious. I know.
yeah. So just
Well,
so you
then,
guys are
hold
aware,
on.
didn't mean to cut in.
Did you
Jack,
see it in the chat?
I did see that. Yeah.
It was an account. I blocked and muted them.
Oh, okay,
You're
okay.
good.
Thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem.
Okay, thank you so
The
much. Thank
mods
you for
are on it.
clarifying
No problem.
that. Awesome. Thank you, Jackson. Yeah, well, and this is part of the problem, I think, too, at this point, because when we're talking about, especially when we're talking about healthcare, right? We're talking about the different aspects of healthcare, right? We're talking about equipment, we're talking about personnel, we're talking about procedures, we're talking about paychecks for doctors, everything else. And that's where like Canada really, I think we need to strengthen healthcare more by bringing it more to the public sector in that sense. Um, Solely because, I mean, if the government kind of has more stakes in it, they'll be able to, just like drug prices, just like other things where they negotiate and they're able to get a better deal and not spending as much, right?
Yeah, yeah. When in the BC election that we had here, the Conservative Party, the BC Conservatives were running on a platform saying that we're the only country in the world that has a public system, whereas in Europe, for example, they have a hybrid system. I think what they're doing is really capitalizing on people's ignorance of how the system is structured. It's very complex. There is no sense solution for a complex problem like this. And you guys touched on it before, we kind of mentioned it. You go to the way they organize their system in the UK is different than France and it's different than Germany.
Yeah.
Sure, they have hybrid systems, but they're not like each other. So what are we really talking about? Because you ask some of the folks there and you tell them Canada has purely public system, they'll scratch their head and say, "Do you guys have dental care?" Not quite. Vision? Not quite. Then no, from their perspective, we are hybrid. So I
Yeah.
think, it's whatever approach we take has to be nuanced, and I'd rather leave it to the experts. I don't want knee-jerk reactions because a lot of what I hear being suggested from the right is that we should just abandon a purely public system, which it's not.
Yeah.
Uh, Instead of looking at existing solutions that might work. I mean, in BC, we had a shortage of family doctors. What did they do? Pay them more. We had more family doctors come here very quick pace within the same public system. Or we have an issue with too many people going to emergency rooms. A lot of clinics don't accept walk-in anymore. The province created non-emergency clinics themselves. Over in Alberta, they're experimenting with virtual emergency rooms. I've heard people say they like it. I've heard people say they don't like it. But there's plenty of things we can do within the existing framework. We don't have to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. And
No, absolutely. I agree with you on that. One thing I will say though is, depending on the different systems within the countries, right? So when we're talking about different countries, you're right. You can't. Not every country is the same, and just because something works for one country doesn't mean it's going to work for the rest. But
right,
where I will point out is, a lot of times, um, when we see countries kind of update or make a change to healthcare systems or education or anything of that nature, a lot of times they will take reference from other countries and how they've been able to do it, like success stories, right?
Definitely,
And
yeah.
that's where it gives a framework for other countries to sit and say, hey, this is how they worked it. Let's explore it. That might not exactly work for us, but if we tweak this aspect or we tweak that aspect, or even like you said, for here in Canada, we've already got the framework. We already have the structure. So maybe there's a way we can incorporate maybe from another country, certain aspects within that framework to kind of patch those holes and make it an actual good structure that's gonna last.
Right on. I think you articulated that perfectly, right? And it's really important to take reference from other countries. The topic of UBI is another one where um, there's plenty of examples worldwide where they've studied the implementation of some form of universal basic income. But whenever it gets debated, people are very quick to say, "But that's not the version we're talking about," or "This isn't the version we're talking about," or "That's not going to work." I understand it's not always going to be exactly a test of what we envision, but there's lessons to be taken away from each instance we're looking at. And that should be the perspective, right? That should be the starting point.
Absolutely. Damien, want to chime in?
Yeah. UBI sounds like a good idea, but I'm always afraid that, the landlord are just going to charge more for rent or the grocery store become more expensive. Is that a baseless fear that I have about this kind of thing happening? Or
I wouldn't say it's baseless. And again, that's kind of based on what province you're in as well, because again, using Ontario, Doug Ford and the Conservatives had scrapped rent control when they first got into office, right? So there's without getting into the whole like big nitty gritty of that one, essentially got rid of protections for renters in a lot of cases. So where you see the term rent evict is a big one in Ontario, where landlords are allowed to tell tenants to move out because they want to renovate. However, once they renovate, they're allowed to charge more, and there's no cap on that. So a landlord can renovate, go to the same tenant, and say, okay, well, at this point, I want you to pay $700 more than what you already were a month. And in most cases, renters can't afford it, so they can't move back in, and the landlord just finds somebody that can pay it, and you have somebody left without a home.
yeah, we have a similar problem with rent here in BC, and we have some protections against rent evictions, but there's still weird rules about how they can kick you out if they need it for family use. Of course, if they lie about that, you can go after them. But yeah, so I think that's a concern that we have across the country, and it sounds like Ontario took a step backwards with those by removing those rental protections.
Yeah.
So, can I make a point about something?
Yep.
With or without universal basic income, rent's going up. Universal income is not going to make rent go up. Hopefully, in provinces that have good rent control. I just wanted to point out what VA is saying about rent evictions. The tenant always has the right to first refusal, which means they can move back into the rental once it has been renovated at the same rent that they paid when they lived there. But what a lot of landlords will do is they'll drag on that reno to the point where that tenant has now made a new life somewhere else. So they don't do that first refusal, right?
Okay.
As for the rent control that Doug Ford took off, that applies to anything built new after November. I don't remember the exact day, but there is a specific day of 2018. So
Yes.
anything built before then still has rent control, but
But
anything
that
built
also has to
after.
go, that's also in terms of your rental agreements, right? So I've been in my apartment now for longer than that. So I'm protected under that. But if
Nope, it has
somebody,
nothing to do with that. That is, I believe it was Harper who got rid of that part of rent control.
Okay.
So there used to be back in about, don't quote me on the year, about 1998, 1999. Previous to that, if you're in your apartment, you move out, I move in immediately after you, there's no gap in the unit being empty, I would pay the same rent you pay, right? So it was really convenient to like be like, okay, I'll move in. I don't need you to paint it. I don't need, because you still got the same rent. What he took away was, if he took that away. So it didn't have to be empty for a month or renos done to take the rent up. The only thing that had to happen was a tenant had to move out. So anything before 2018 has to go up through the the percentage that's set every year, or it can go up to any amount once you move out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing. Like in my building, that's exactly what I see because somebody moves out, and the next person moves in, and yeah, the conversation goes to what they're paying for rent because that's the tactic that my landlord uses is as soon as somebody moves out, she'll slap a fresh coat of paint on the wall and raise the rent by $400 a month and move somebody else in.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's been in place for as long as my oldest has been. I remember intentionally when she was young, not moving, trying as hard as I could to not move because my rent would be fairly cheap, and then when I moved, it would go up by $400 or $500, right?
yeah. Yeah, like and for example, guys, like I'm gonna give a little bit of personal information here, which is fine. So I pay roughly just under $900 a month for my two-bedroom apartment. Um, and that's with the legal rent increases that my landlord is allowed to give me each year
Hmm.
when she remembers. Thankfully, she's forgotten quite a quite a few years, which is great. Um, but so I'm paying that, but there's people in this building now currently paying $1,600 for the exact same apartment. The only difference is it might have newer click flooring or it might have a fresher coat of paint, but it's the exact same layout with the exact same amenities, all that stuff. And, in some cases, they're paying almost double what I pay. So,
Can I add something to that, Moose? Because I
yeah,
lived
absolutely.
with
So, for
You're
two.
context,
so
the Pasty
quiet.
native, the Pasty native actually lived in the same building as I do right now. So they know all about
Oh,
this.
Oh yeah, and she didn't even fix my apartment before I moved in. I had to paint it. I had to fix my floors. I had to put back on my trim, everything, and I was still being charged $14.50 a month.
I'm sorry.
And
That's why
and
I
just to
left.
boot,
Oh,
I ended up finding a stove, an oven and stove for Pasty Native because the landlord refused to actually go and get one.
because
That was
mine crapped
appropriate.
out and would consistently short out anytime I tried to use my oven.
Yeah.
I had been asking for over, I think it was been almost 9 months that I had been asking her for a new one, along with a new fridge, because I had this tiny little dinky fridge that you use in like an RV for myself and my three boys that didn't freeze things properly or keep things cold in the fridge. Oh, and I had mushrooms growing out of my walls.
Oh my lord.
So, Beaver, do you feel trapped in this market?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think a lot of
yeah,
people, yeah, because I know a lot of people who are seniors who've been living in like their purpose-built rental for a long time, but by now their kids have gone, they might be single, they want to downgrade, and they're looking at paying the same price they are
if
for
not
their two
more.
bedroom just to downgrade, if not more, to downgrade to a one bed or even a
Yep,
studio or further away. They're trapped,
yep.
but they still can't afford it because they're going into retirement. So their option is to like go out to Langley, very far from the city. This might be okay, But in this market, they still have to work part-time and they have a job and they'll have to quit if they move that far away. And they're
Yeah.
old, they're not confident they can find a new one. A lot of it's not just the younger generations this kind of market's affecting everyone.
No, I
The
absolutely. It is. I think when we talk about, like the younger generation, um, the biggest issue, and I think why people say it's affecting them more, is because at this point they can't even get into the housing market, let alone try to decide, make a decision on where they want to go or how they want to do it, right? So that's where I think the biggest thing is. But you're right. Especially seniors right now that are living off of pension, or not living off of, but living with pensions, living with limited income at that point, when we've seen the cost of living go through the roof like we have, especially the cost for a roof over your head, however you want to look at it, whether it's buying a house or renting, it's squeezing savings and pensions out of people's pockets, and we just don't have enough for everything else at this point.
Yep. It's pretty sad. But I don't really see anyone. Well, I think our provincial government and BC's done a good job with cutting red tape and all that. But at a federal level, I see that bye bye. I see that each major party leader recognizes it to be a significant issue,
Mhm.
calls it a crisis, but we went through the '08 crisis. I know what we're capable of doing when we're in a crisis. We went through the COVID crisis. Why aren't we taking the same full measures we did now?
Well, and I
I feel
think
like
I
it's
think
just a lot of talk and not actually really delivering.
Well, and that's where, so just to clarify a little bit, and then I'm gonna do a round robin here, guys, quick before I wrap up, so everyone will have time for some last comments. But just quickly, like that's where we see for the Liberals under the Trudeau government, like there were things put in place that they moved to more of a wartime measure in terms of housing, right? It was the same concept we saw after World War II, when it came to housing, when government really did have a big part to play in new housing being built across the country. So they use certain aspects of that we've seen in the past in terms of material efficient, cost effective layouts and plans for homes. I think where we need to start seeing more is the federal government kind of having more of a hand in terms of having government run and owned housing, like we saw back in the early to mid 1900s. And we really saw like the housing crisis we're in now has been a buildup over decades, right? It's been since around early 70s where it was a shift towards condos and that sort of stuff. So the government kind of moved away as private enterprise took over building of homes that Canadians wanted. And really, that was North America, not just Canada at that time that was going through that change, right? So, Damien, last final words or thoughts to throw in?
Yeah, just quick self promo. Follow me if you're NDP and you want to talk about how we should replace Jagmeet Singh as the party leader.
There you go. I will admit, somebody that sits out, like I normally vote NDP, but I'm able to sit back and kind of look at all parties without a bias. And I will say I agree. I think it's time for Singh to step aside after this election, and let's see if we can get somebody that has more drive and is willing to move the goalpost more.
I'd like
So
someone. I'd even like just like someone blue collar.
hey
See,
guys, do you think we could convince Charlie Angus to get in there? I know his name's
Wob,
been thrown out a lot.
maybe
Wob.
Yeah, Wob. Nah,
Wob
Wob's
Canoe's
got
coming
to.
up.
He's got to stay on the provincial level, I think, for a little while longer. Give him another 2 terms if he can pull those out for the province, and then start looking at the federal. I think for Wob.
No,
Perfect.
he's a prodigy. Bring him up.
Pasty Native, last thoughts or comments?
Uh, I agree with Damien about the fact that Jagmeet Singh should resign and we should pick
Mhm.
someone else as the head of the NDP party. When he first started, I had oh so many hopes for him, but he's kind of just petered out. And now it very much seems like a smear campaign when he's talking about the other uh, candidates.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I will fully agree with that, and that's one thing I can say about Carney coming in now too, which is a breath of fresh air, and hopefully
Yeah,
see what I'm saying because I mean even the Liberals under Justin Trudeau, essentially that's what the whole political landscape was, whether it was Conservative, NDP, Liberal, it was all pointing fingers, right? The Greens stayed out of it,
yeah,
the Bloc kind of got in on it but tried to stay out of it. But yeah, so and that's something that if a party leader or parties in general can move away from the finger pointing and criticizing and name calling, really would bolster their numbers a lot more. Even the NDP, I think, would be able to gain back even a degree of momentum in terms of support instead of they're continuing to lose numbers as the polls go on leading into election day. Um,
and then just a
Sahan,
reminder:
did you
everybody
want?
go vote.
Sorry.
I just want to put the last reminder: everybody, make sure you get out and vote. It is important.
Yes, make sure you get out and vote, everyone. Very important. Sahan, last thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I think that this has been a really great live. I love the way that you moderate, and thanks to everybody else who joined and contributed. Absolutely, please get out and vote. Hopefully, we can break voter turnout barrier of what, 78%. I'm not sure what's the highest we've ever had, but I feel like if there's ever an opportunity to really set a record, it's now.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna hit a record, but I definitely think in modern election, like federal election history, I think the numbers are gonna be up, especially given how many different factors, uh, that are being talked about and focused on during this election. What some of the biggest stuff being the tariffs, trade with the United States, kind of global trade, really at this point, as we navigate figuring out new trade agreements or adjusting other trade agreements with, other countries to offset what we're seeing from the United States.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Jax, last thoughts or comments?
Hey, get out and vote. Don't care who you vote for. And if you have children, take them with you. Show them what the voting process is like. Show them, I don't let my children come behind the screen with me, but my vote is private, their vote is private, and just get out there and every vote literally does count. That's all.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
teach your kids.
Yes, we definitely need to do better in terms of really letting our next generations know what the process is before they step into it. So I absolutely agree with that. And again, bolstering, and I love it, Jax. Thank you so much. Everyone's been bolstering. Just get out and vote. Election day is April 28th. So either vote early or make sure you turn out to the polls on April 28th, guys. Very important. You're going to see so much information hit you through this election campaign. And if you're in Ontario, you're now used to it because we went through it on the provincial level where we got jam packed full of information in so little time. There's definitely going to be
Oh,
information fatigue coming the
can
end
I
of
add?
this. And yep,
Can I
absolutely.
add one more thing?
Yep.
Elections Canada is currently hiring for their polls. You have to be able to work a 14-hour day, but a lot of it is sitting, and it is well worth it, and it's a little money in your pocket on a day that, you may be off because your children are home from school because there's an election. Just saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There you go, guys. If you're interested in, um, you know, like she said, working on election day, they've absolutely been looking. So reach out and find the avenues to do so. Um, yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for everyone that did come up tonight. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. I loved every moment of it. New people up here on the panel, like yourself, Sahan. Um, I always appreciate it. Thank you so much for your kind words at the end there. I do my best to try and make it a nice and good place for anyone to have a conversation, really, and try and not get into the yelling and whatnot we see a lot of times these days.
Right on.
Uh,
I hope to see you again.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I will make sure I give you a follow, and I'm here every Sunday. And I'm also a part of Beaver Politics here on TikTok. So we have shows every day of the week. So, guys, make sure you go check that out as well. But for now, I'm going to wrap things up and call it a night. So, until next time, stay safe, stay sane, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and I'll see you next week.